You know, the stories we tell ourselves about our lives, they are so incredibly powerful. They're not just little fairy tales we make up. They're the actual lens we use to see the world. They shape how we view everything, our lives, our relationships, our whole purpose. So today, we're going to dive into what happens when someone decides to just completely rewrite their own story. So, let me ask you something right off the bat. If you had to use a single metaphor to describe your life, what would it be? Is it a battle, a journey, maybe a game? Seriously think about it, because the analogy you pick fundamentally changes how you experience everything that happens to you. We're going to look at two powerful and totally opposite metaphors that can completely reframe a person's entire existence. On one side, you've got life as a school you just have to get through. And on the other, life is a movie that you get to help create. This is the story of that exact shift. Now, for a lot of us, this first way of thinking might feel, well, pretty familiar. It comes from someone who, for a really long time, saw their life as a kind of cosmic school, just filled with one lesson after another that had to be learned whether they liked it or not. So, what does this life as a school idea really mean? Well, it's a worldview where every single thing that happens and every person you meet is some kind of lesson. And in this school, your family relationships, whoa, that's the final exam. That's the most advanced PhD-level course you have to somehow pass. So in this framework, the people who are supposed to be closest to you get cast in a very specific role. Your parents aren't partners or teammates. They literally become the curriculum. They are the obstacles. They're the biggest, hardest lessons you're meant to overcome. It's automatically setting you up for a fight. And this quote, this gets right to the heart of that mindset. The word lesson might sound pretty neutral, right? But for this person, it basically just meant challenge, struggle. Every conversation, every memory was framed as just another tough test they had to get through. But what happens when the story you're telling yourself just stops working? When that metaphor feels more like a prison than a guide? Well, for this person, the whole life as a school thing eventually just hit a wall. It wasn't sustainable anymore. And it all came down to this really simple but incredibly powerful realization. If you've built your entire existence around an idea you secretly can't stand, something is very, very wrong. This wasn't just a thought, it was an emotional rejection of the whole story. And the reason for that rejection was crystal clear. The whole school metaphor wasn't leading to growth or learning. It was just producing a ton of anxiety. It created this constant pressure, this feeling of always being tested, always being judged. So that led to a final definitive conclusion. If life is meant to be lived, and the metaphor you're using to live it is just causing constant anxiety, then the metaphor has to go. It just can't be school. End of story. Now, having that realization didn't magically fix everything. Not at all. Instead, it kicked off an active search for a better story, a new analogy that felt more empowering, more positive, and honestly, more true to the life this person actually wanted to live. The very first step away from school was moving toward the idea of a journey. The focus started to shift from these separate, difficult lessons to a more complete process of moving forward. So why was journey a better fit? Well, because it just implied so much more than passing tests. It opened things up to include discovery, the whole process of becoming who you are, or even just the simple act of being. It felt bigger, all-encompassing. It wasn't about challenges to beat, but an experience to be lived. And this search for a better word led to an even deeper question, the one that really unlocked everything. It wasn't about finding a pre-made label anymore. It was about asking, wait a minute, what are these narratives running in my head in the first place? And who's writing this script anyway? And that is when the big breakthrough happened. After throwing out that old, frustrating story and searching for a new one, a much more dynamic, much more creative metaphor finally clicked into place. This was the big aha moment. It wasn't a journey with a path someone else made, and it definitely wasn't a school with a rigid curriculum. No, life is a movie. It's a screenplay being written, a production that's happening right now. I mean, that changes everything, doesn't it? Okay, so let's break that down. This life as a movie metaphor completely reframes you. You go from being a passive student stuck at a desk to an active, creative participant. You're part of the production. You actually have a say in how the story is told, what scenes matter, and even what genre you're living in. And here comes the most dramatic shift of all. Remember how parents were obstacles back in the school metaphor? Well, in the movie of your life, they become something totally different. They are part of the cast. They're playing an incredible, vital role. They are an essential ingredient to the whole plot. I mean, that's the whole transformation in a nutshell. A move from this adversarial relationship to a creative one. Your parents are no longer a problem you have to solve, but key characters in your story, shaping the narrative in all these complex and important ways. So we'll end with this. If your life really is a movie, a whole production, a screenplay, it brings up one final massive question. You might not always get to write the script, and you definitely don't control all the other actors on set. But who gets to sit in the director's chair?